Steam Tank says hello. Welcome back to Call of Warhammer. Today I'm going to be playing as the Grand Principality of Reichland against the Vampire Counts. I brought two very unique units to the battlefield today, the Bright Wizards and the Steam Tanks, and I'll talk about those more once the replay starts. But for now, I have a main line of Huskarls, which are basically going to be meat shields. They have javelins. They're going to be taking up a lot of the fire and the charges from the more elite units from the Vampire Counts. On my left flank, I have a group of Witch Hunters that are good in melee and have a ranged attack with their pistols. I have a main line of Reiksguard Halberds and dismounted Reiksguard, and a general unit of warrior Priests of Sigmar, very strong in melee with those two-handed warhammers. And in the back, I have two Blackguard of Moor. They are knights that worship the god of death in the Warhammer universe. And then over on my left flank, some Carroburg Greatswords and a Empire Swordsman. Again, some of those are not the most elite units, but they're going to be holding down the front, making sure that my more important Reiksguard don't get cut down in melee really easily. So, this replay is going to get underway, and my Vampire Count opponent has some Drakenhof Guard there, some Blood Dragons, dismounted Blood Dragons. Over on his left flank, I believe he has some Vampire Black Knights, and he has this very scary unit right here, which I'm going to talk about more once you start seeing them throw some shots, the Screaming Skull Catapult. They do a lot of damage, crazy morale penalty, and that's kind of the thing with the Vampire Counts, is they want to get you routing from the field as quickly as possible because so many of their units cause fear effects. So I'm going to open up with my Steam Tank here. You can see my opponent has quite the hill to assail at the moment, but my Bright Wizards have one job, and that is to rain an ungodly effing firestorm on the undead, and they're going to do a great job of that. Bright Wizards are ridiculous. They don't have very good accuracy, but the AoE blast on their attack is absolutely insane. It can do a ton of damage, and you can already see that. Their rate of fire and just the massive AoE that they're kind of putting under fire at the moment is ridiculous. A lot of these Vampire Cavalry units are already depleted, about to half strength, and this battle is barely underway. So these are pretty high tier units right here. Knights of the Black Grail, actually, that I'm killing at the moment. Very important units, so getting them off the field as quickly as possible before they get into melee is going to be very, very nice. The fact that the Bright Wizards are so strong, though, is of course balanced out by the fact that they are so expensive. Their 15,000 gold crowns were playing a 50,000 gold crown game, so they're roughly a fourth of my entire funds. So a lot of invested in those Bright Wizards right there. On my left flank and on his right, he is committing a bunch of his Blood Dragon Knights and some more Vampire Black Knights into melee. I let my Empire Swordsman be a little bit too far up there, so they're going to get charged in the back, but I was running away, and so they didn't actually take as big a charge as they possibly could have if I had just braced and sat there. So I'm going to charge in with some Reiksguard, and you can already see some of the friendly fire. I started shooting into the Cav units, which are very expensive, and you can see I just got maybe 20 kills on those Vampire Black Knights, which is very important, but there is some friendly fire going on because the Bright Wizards have that massive AoE, so if you're shooting at anything even remotely close to your own troops, there is a chance you're going to be doing damage to your own men. So Blackguard of Moor are going to go into melee here. Didn't get a good charge bonus off, and they actually don't use lances as well. So the Blood Dragons shouldn't have too hard a time there if they're just 1v1ing the Blackguard of Moor, but they're actually 2 units of Cav over there for me. So he's going to kind of have a hard time there. But my Bright Wizards are still in the back, have a really good position, just overlooking the entire battlefield. Going to start shooting into the Drakenhof Guard and the Skeleton Crossbows as they move up. So you can just see the massive AoE, their massive fire damage they're unleashing across the entire battlefield right now. 2 of those Drakenhof Guard lost about 20 men, so that's pretty important. And the melee engagement has started in earnest. So Carroburg Greatswords in melee against Blood Dragons is going to go very poorly for me. Greatswords are great in melee. They are not Blood Dragons. Blood Dragons are some of the most powerful melee units in this entire game, and in the lore as well. So pretty scary to go up against them in melee combat. Have my Witch Hunters in a really good position as well on my left flank, overlooking the Blackguard of Moor and the Blood Dragons who are in melee right now. And they have a nice little angle of fire to shoot into those Blood Dragons at the moment. Their ranged attack isn't amazing, but it's solid, and I'm doing some damage over here. But normally I'd be able to cause some morale shocks with the shots from the gunpowder, but that's actually not going to be the case against the Blood Dragons or any of the Vampire units because they are immune to fear. So you can see that kind of wavering. A lot of my flags and a lot of his flags actually are flashing white. They're not actually wavering at the moment. Some of the units are routing, but they're routing because of the Screaming Skull catapult. That, along with the fact that the vampire counts in general cause a lot of fear damage, is going to be a massive problem for my main line. Along with the fact that I'm doing some friendly fire, as you can see right there with my Bright Wizards. I want to kill a lot of these really high tier units. The Blood Dragons, they're very expensive. If I can get them off the field with the Bright Wizard, that's very, very good for me. But I'm exposing my own line to friendly fire, and along with the morale penalties from, oh my god, there were like 15 or 20 Blood Dragons that just died right there. But along with the morale stacking penalties from the Screaming Skull catapult, and just the fear that the main line of Blood Dragons and vampire units cause in general, it's making a lot of my normally very good melee units start routing from the battlefield. So you can see the balance bar has already shifted a lot in the vampire count's favor. Gojira's done a good job of stacking those morale penalties, and it was kind of a trade-off. Like, I wanted to cause a lot of morale penalties, or a lot of killing with my Bright Wizards, but I'm also obviously doing friendly fire to my own guys, so not sure that it's worth it, but I do know that they're doing a ton of damage to the main line of vampire counts as well, so it's just one of those trade-offs. Don't know if it's worth it yet. We're going to see as we progress further into this battle. You can see massive damage being done here to every unit right there. Bright Wizards have a great line of sight right there. They're doing a lot of damage to both sides at the moment. But it looks like the Blood Dragons are kind of pushing through. And at this point, my main line is going to break. So Vampire Count, Cav, and a bunch of other units are finally going to push through. And the Vampire Black Grail Knights are going to go around the flank and probably get into my Bright Wizards pretty soon here. But just look at the damage that's being done at the moment. It's pretty ridiculous. But finally, my main line breaks, and now I'm exposed. Yeah, Blood Dragons just got into my Bright Wizards, so they're all dead at the moment. Certainly did a lot of damage, but they're not going to be shooting anymore. And the Witch Hunters are now tied down in melee against the Vampire Black Knights. And some Blood Dragons are getting in, and he's pretty much taking the hill at the moment. So, there are a couple things that are working in my favor, but not a lot. Things are looking kind of bad. But Warrior Priests of Sigmar are still alive, my General is still alive. And hopefully some of my Reiksguard are going to be able to come back from routing. They did run from the field, but they were routing with like 80 or 70 men left in the unit. So still have plenty of men at fighting strength. So if they come back, they might be able to do some damage, but that's a big if. Huge hammer and anvil there for my steam tank. I'm going to start using their melee capabilities. You guys have seen what they can do against Night Goblins. Now we're going to see what they can do against vampire counts. But really good hammer and anvil, and actually I don't think the melee capabilities from the steam tank can cause friendly fire, which is interesting. I saw that they ran through my Warrior Priest of Sigmar right there, but I didn't lose any men. And I do know that the undead halberds that I was fighting right there did lose a lot of men. So, interesting. I'm not sure if the steam tanks can actually cause friendly fire with their melee capabilities. I know that they can cause friendly fire with their cannon. But running through a bunch of these Blood Dragons, just trying to do as much damage as I can. The gun is not the important part of the steam tank, at least in this mod. It can do some damage, of course, but it's not particularly accurate. It's the hammer and anvils and the running through a bunch of infantry units that really makes them rack up those kills. So, things are looking quite dire for me at the moment. More chain routing going on. The few units that I do still have on the field kind of beat up. The Warrior Priests of Sigmar are doing well. I believe they're past 100 kills at this point, and beating up a lot of these lower tier units, but Vod Gojira has taken the hill from me and completely surrounded my steam tank, which is not the biggest deal. It was at this point that we were wondering what the steam tank's capabilities actually were. Now we know that they can absolutely crush really low tier units like Night Goblins. They can kill hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of Night Goblins and zombies and those kind of things. But we were wondering if they could actually carry a battle all by themselves. So we weren't really sure what to expect. The balance bar is, again, very much in Gojira's favor, but we didn't know if the steam tank was just going to be something like killing the rest of the vampire count's army, because we haven't seen a steam tank die before. So we were on Skype and we were just laughing about it and wondering what was actually going to happen with that. But most of my other units, the Witch Hunters are almost dead at this point. The Warriors of Sigmar are doing relatively well, but I mean they're completely surrounded by many high tier units. It really is, if I'm going to win this battle, completely up to the steam tank, and we weren't sure if it was up to that challenge at the moment. So some of my units are going to come back from routing soon. Reiksguard halberds running up the hill right there, and steam tank again completely surrounded. It's very buggy when it fights against cavalry units. it doesn't actually kill Cav very easily. It's much more effective against infantry. For Cav, it kind of just pushes them out of the way, which the animation honestly looks really quite funny. But yeah, the Witch Hunter is completely surrounded at this point by Blood Dragons and Vampire Black Grail Knights. And Warrior Priests of Sigmar are going to get a little bit of a downhill charge here. And the melee engagement is going to really begin in earnest at this point. If my Warrior Priests of Sigmar can kill a couple of these units, and my Steam Tank can kill the gen... Well, actually, no. I'm going to rephrase that. Killing a gen does not matter against vampire counts at all. And again, that's one of the biggest things about the vampire counts in this mod. What makes me think that they're one of the strongest factions in the entire mod is that they don't have any morale... Like, morale shocks don't work against them. All of their units, for the most part, are immune to fear. They do not rout. So you can use something like the Screaming Skull Catapult and not worry about causing chain routes on your own line, because your men don't rout. So, like the Reiksguard, for example, have exceptional morale on the tooltip, but they routed it, like, they ran screaming like little girls with like 90 men still left in the unit. So, it's making me think, and we have to do more testing the more we play in this mod, but Gojira and I'm sure Maximus would agree that we think vampire counts might be the strongest faction in this mod, and of course it's not going to translate to TW Warhammer when that officially comes out, but maybe it will. I mean, being immune to fear is very, very important in a Total War game, because it just means that morale shocks and outflanking penalties don't matter to you. It just does not matter. So, Drakenhof Guard in here against the remainders of my Reiksguard and my Warrior Priests of Sigmar. It's a fight that I should be able to win, but I mean, I'm just so outnumbered at this point. Steam Tank is going to do what it can, and it will do a lot of damage, but I'm going to put it into fast forward just a second here. We started thinking that the Steam Tank, as cool as it is kind of a little anti-hype, because when you invest that much money into one unit, you're probably going to lose a lot of your other units, and so the Steam Tank is probably going to be one of, if not the last unit left on the field. And yes, it's cool to see the Steam Tank like 1v500 a bunch of other units, but when we were playing it, it actually got to the point where it was kind of boring, because we were playing at normal speed, and it was just driving through everything, and we were seeing what it could do. As my general dies right there, that's going to be the nail in my coffin for at least the Warrior Priest of Sigmar unit right there. But at this point, like, everything's run from the field except the Steam Tanks, and we just kind of saw it like running around. I actually killed his gen, just driving through everything. But it was a little anti-hype, because like we were just seeing it in normal speed, and it wasn't doing enough to win me the battle. It was killing a ton of men, but we weren't sure if it was going to actually cause enough damage for us to win. So I actually want to talk about the Steam Tank a little bit. We know that it's confirmed for Total War Warhammer. I wanted to just kind of read a description of it and talk about how it might be once Total War Warhammer comes out, because it's one of the units that I'm most excited to see. It's definitely one of the coolest units in this mod, despite the fact that it 1v500s entire armies and it gets a little silly. But I'll talk about the Steam Tank a little bit right here. So the Steam Tanks still in service with the Empire were designed by the famed Chilean inventor Leonardo of Miragliano. After his death, the secrets of the Steam Tanks were lost with him, and basically any Empire engineer who tried to recreate his efforts were unable to do so. So there were only 12 tanks built in the entire Warhammer world, and only 8 of those still remain, and no new ones have been able to be produced since he died. 4 of those were destroyed during testing or battle, so of those 12 tanks, only 8 still remain. Obviously, with a tank, crossbow bolts, arrows, that kind of thing will not penetrate. Even cannon fire sometimes is completely shrugged off by the armor of the Steam Tank. So very, very tanky, you could say. During the battle, it's commanded and driven by an engineer who manages and directs the steam from the boiler to the tank's mechanisms. And should too much pressure build up in the boiler, it can actually rupture and kill the entire crew, which has happened to a couple of the tanks. So the most common configuration for a steam tank is a cannon in its hull and a steam gun mounted on its turret. And the steam gun is basically used when enemies get close to the tank, as the weapon's very nature makes it very short range. So it basically shoots a cloud of searing hot steam against anyone who gets close to the tank. And as you can probably guess, armor doesn't give you any protection against superheated water or flame. So even like the finest warriors in the entire Warhammer universe get boiled inside when they get close to a steam tank, unless they're protected by runes or magic. But unfortunately, in Call of Warhammer, the tank doesn't actually have the steam weapon, which kind of sucks. But in the tabletop and in TW Warhammer, I doubt that it's going to be able to run over everything that stands in its way like it does in this mod. And I bet that in Total War Warhammer, we're going to get to see the steam gun on top of the tank, or I'm hoping that we're able to. So there's a bit of a trade-off there. But that was that battle. I ended up losing, but my Bright Wizards and my Steam Tank both did a ridiculous amount of damage. Bright Wizards and Steam Tank each got about 490 kills, closing in on 500 right there. There were 100 friendly fire kills from the Bright Wizards, and the morale penalties, which were the more important thing. The 100 friendly fire kill, not a big deal, but definitely a very big deal for the morale penalties. I don't know if the Screaming Skulls and the Vampire Fear effect was what caused the chain route, or if the Bright Wizards on top of that is what kind of sent my men over the edge. But either way, my main line was pathetic. My Reiksguard got pooped on in that fight, which was unfortunate. But it was a really fun battle, and we got to see the Bright Wizards unleash carnage everywhere. So it was pretty awesome, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you all later. Indie Pride signing out.